Today, I'm going to be presenting the women's suffrage movement. I hope you enjoy the presentation. First, we will start with what was the women's suffrage movement. It was a long fight of almost 100 years where women had to go through for getting the right to vote and being eligible for public charges in the United States. It took place in the 1800s and early 1900s. The type of language that women used when they were fighting for the right to vote, they used different types of language for communicating their message. There were two types of women during this movement, suffragists and suffragettes, which we will be talking about in a minute. Suffragists used language such as marching, talks, and conferences, while suffragettes used protest, hunger strike, and marching. The difference between suffragists and suffragettes is that suffragists used more peaceful methods, such as the ones mentioned before, for convincing the people, while suffragettes used more radical actions as the ones mentioned before for convincing the people. But what they had in common is that they had the same objective, but they used different methods to get it. Here we can observe some images of how they look like. Some of the most representative women in the suffrage movement were Elizabeth Cady Stanton, which was an American leader in the suffrage movement. She drafted the first organized demand for women's suffrage in the United States. Lucy Stone was an acclaimed American orator, suffragette in the 19th century American history. Lucretia Mott was a defender of women's rights, pioneer within the feminist movement, and participated in the organization of Seneca Falls Convention. Susan B. Anthony was a feminist suffragette writer and human rights defender who played an important role in the suffrage movement in the 19th century. Here we can observe how these women look like: Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony. Now I'm going to be presenting a timeline where I'm going to show you the most important events during this fight. The first one is in 1848, where the movement began. In 1869, the National and American Women's Suffrage Organizations began. In 1893, Colorado became the first state to allow women to vote. In 1913, Alice Paul and Lucy Burns worked to get a federal amendment which allowed women to vote. Finally, in 1920, women are allowed to vote and it becomes a law. Here I created a small gallery where we can observe how these events happened. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and remember that the power of language can help us achieve whatever we want. Thank you.